And welcome back, everyone, to another installment of the Vendetta Sports Daily Show. I am Germani DePena. Alongside me today is Andrew McGinnis out in the beautiful weather. You know, it's like 88 degrees over here in Massachusetts. And I believe, Andrew, you said it was like 80, 81. So, like, just perfect
Yeah, it
weather
is
out
somehow the same in South Bend, Indiana, which is definitely not a given for this time of year, or really any time of year, honestly. Spring just never came last year, so I'm excited. It's made an appearance in 2023.
there. No, absolutely. And just fingers crossed for, like, just more weather. Like, it doesn't need to get any hotter, okay? So, we got
Yeah. This is perfect.
perfect weather. Okay. But I know before we hopped on, you wanted to talk about some NHL playoff stuff. So let's just dive right into it.
hmm Yeah, I mean, final really full day of regular season action tonight, and honestly, there's a lot still at stake tonight. We only know one first round matchup still that's locked in Toronto and Tampa. We know our 16 teams now, with the Islanders clinching last night, the Jets clinching a night or two prior to that. But usually the last day of the NHL season, there's maybe like one or two seedings to play for, but we don't know a lot yet. We still know who the one seed's going to be in the West. We don't know either division champion. We don't know any division champion, in fact, except for the Atlantic, of course, where Boston's just run away with everything. And I mean, they've already set the wins record. They're going to try to go for 65 tonight, which is crazy considering the previous record was 62. So there's a lot to look forward to tonight. It's going to be a great, really last full night of regular season hockey. Two games tomorrow, one of which could be meaningful. Colorado, could still be in contention for the Central, potentially. But yeah, it's really exciting, obviously, and of course, Stanley Cup playoffs at least start Monday. I want to say so. It's a really nice time of year, and obviously, some great games already. But the NBA with the play-in, I think all four of them have basically been down to the wire, really, which is great, obviously. And I'm looking forward to Saturday, just chilling, watching my Sixers play, starting the playoffs off. Hopefully, they start off right. It's a great time of year to be a sports fan.
Oh, absolutely. And I believe so all right, so tell me this because I'm like you're the hockey aficionado out of the two of us. I want to just get your deep dive. I don't know who your favorite team is. I don't know if you have a problem talking about the Bruins, but I wanted to ask you like what has made the Bruins so dominant throughout just like what's made this year so much different than the Bruins we've seen in the last couple of years?
Well, for starters, the Bruins have two of the best value contracts in the league in David Krejci and Patrice Bergeron as their second and first line center. Obviously, both those guys, longtime Bruins. Krejci left last season to go home to play in Czechia, but now he's back. And then you have Bergeron, a Selke Trophy caliber center, scoring still at an elite rate, making $2.5 million for 1 year. Krejci only $1 million, and he's been fantastic for the Bruins this season. So you've got two centers right there making $3.5 million combined. That should probably be combined for like close to 15, $20 million. So obviously that's a massive advantage right there. But really for Boston, it's just the amount of high end talent that they really have on this team. Obviously they've got a fantastic goalie tandem in Linus Olmark and Jeremy Swayman. I mean, you're throwing out, that type of goaltending every single night. Obviously you've got a great shot of beating anyone. The Hampus Lindholm trade the Bruins made at last year's deadline, which kind of seemed like a weird fit at the time, has really paid off now that Lindholm's got to settle in for a full season. He's been fantastic. Might even get some Norris votes this year. Um, he's been great, and really those guys have kind of just set the tone for Boston. They got off to a fantastic start this season, despite having some injuries to start the year. They didn't have Charlie Mack, or they didn't have Brad Marchand, and so they got off to a good start even without those guys. And once they came back, it just took them to a whole different level.
Gotcha. And I feel like just the name Patrice Bergeron, I feel like he's just been like associated with the Bruins forever. I don't even know like how old
Absolutely.
the guy is anymore. Like, how old is he nowadays?
Bergeron is 37 years old. First or second round pick by Boston back in 2003.
My goodness. Let me ask you this
Yep.
about like when it comes to hockey in terms of like guys getting older. Like I know baseball, like guys can be productive in like the twilights of their careers, like their late 30s. How is it in hockey? Because I feel like it's a little bit more physically demanding.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it is a very physically demanding sport. You definitely do see some guys. I mean, most players by 37 have definitely dropped off. Maybe Bergeron has a tad, but I'm talking microscopic, if that even. Um, yeah, I mean, what Bergeron's doing isn't completely unprecedented in terms of players having great seasons in their late 30s or whatnot. But it's obviously very rare, and it really
Oh, Andrew might have lost you a little bit. I'm loving just allowing him just go off in terms of talking about hockey. I feel like this is great. I'm learning a lot. But like you cut out when you were like going in talking about Bergeron. Okay, so just
Yeah,
repeat what
yeah.
you were talking about.
Yeah, for Bergeron, just what I was saying is it's not unprecedented entirely for a player 37, late 30s or so to have a great season, but it is very rare. You usually do see players drop off. Bergeron's skill set, where he's obviously, one of his greatest attributes is his hockey sense. That, makes him the type of player who naturally is going to age well because, you're always going to have those smarts, obviously, those instincts. So that's not going to leave you. Your ability to act on them may start to deteriorate a little bit over time. But if you have that instincts, that great foundation, then you can be a great player for a long time. And we've seen that with Anze Kopitar, another similar player, a great two-way center, won the Selke Trophy before. He's getting up there in age as well. He's into his mid to late 30s, and he's still having a fantastic year for the LA Kings, who are one of the bigger underdogs, I think, going into these playoffs. A team that made it last year and has the chance, if they can especially get past Edmonton in round one, to potentially go on a really deep run. So, assuming they play Edmonton, which isn't guaranteed, of course, but yeah. I mean, what Bergeron's doing isn't entirely unprecedented, but it's very special.
Gotcha. So just looking at the wide range of like the other teams that are in the playoffs now, I would want to ask you: is it kind of like a far gone conclusion that the Bruins can run away with it, or is it going to be kind of like more of a bloodbath, a more even playing field like the NBA playoffs are right now?
I think it's going to be a bit more even playing field. A President's Trophy winner has not won the Stanley Cup since Chicago in 2013. That was in a shortened season due to a lockout. So, hockey playoffs are so random. Obviously, we've seen that time and time again. Of course, a couple of years ago, we saw the Lightning tie the record for most wins in a single season, and they got swept in the first round by the Columbus Blue Jackets. So it can be very random. Of course, Boston is going to have, assuming they win their first round series, which they should. As of now, they would play Florida. It might be the Islanders as well. Both those teams certainly have some talent. They have maybe what it takes to give Boston a scare, but I would expect that Boston would beat either of those two teams in a best of seven. But I mean, they're going to be playing either a Toronto team that's incredibly skilled and has finally shed the series win monkey off their back, or they're going to be playing the defending Eastern Conference champions, the Tampa Bay Lightning, who of course won the Cup in 2020 and 2021 and went through Boston in the second round in 2020 as well in the bubble in pretty convincing fashion. Also beat them in the second round as well back in 2018. And there's still a decent amount of players on both sides who are still around from both of those series. So Boston obviously is the favorite, but they are definitely not a guaranteed, it's not like this is like a Warriors Cavs situation from a few years back where they were just absolutely expected to steamroll through at least to the championship and, maybe run into some difficulties there. There's definitely a chance that this Boston team, for as great as they are, could potentially bow out. I don't think it's going to be in first round, but in that second round series, it's going to be tricky for them. Obviously, they're a great team. They'll be favored in that second round series, and deservedly so, but it's not going to be a walk in the park.
It's really interesting just the learning about like because I know the NHL playoffs. I feel like there's a lot more upset potential for a lot of like quote unquote really dominant
Absolutely.
teams. So I feel like that's what
Mhm.
makes it so unpredictable. And I feel like so entertaining for a lot of fans, both diehards and casuals alike. So I would want just to
Mhm.
kind of like tie a bow on this whole discussion. Do you have a pick on who you believe is going to win the Stanley Cup this year,
Ooh, I haven't really thought about it, to be honest with you.
or do you have a
Um,
matchup at least?
yeah, I'll give you a matchup here. Let's go with um, coming out of the West. I'm gonna go with Edmonton this year. Uh, the Oilers have 44 regulation wins this year, which is actually the second most in the NHL of any team behind Boston. Um, some people I know make a big deal out of that because obviously there's no 3-on-3 or shootout in the playoffs, so I think that's a really good way to kind of evaluate which teams are propped up by that a little bit, and which teams are a little bit more dominant and convincing in 5-on-5 and just a full 60 minutes as well. Obviously, Edmonton is a great power play, of course, too. But I mean, you combine the two-headed monster of McDavid and Draisaitl. For years we've talked about with the Oilers. Yeah, they've got these two big stars, but they don't really have much depth. Their defense is a question mark. The goaltending is shaky, all that good stuff. Well, you look at what Stuart Skinner's done in net. He's been very solid for them since he really kind of took over the starter's role for Jack Campbell a couple months into the season. The Matthias Ekholm trade really gives them that shutdown defender that they really truly haven't had in the McDavid era yet. And the moves that they've made to bring in some guys like Zach Hyman, you've had a career for Ryan Nugent Hopkins as well. It's helped solidify things a little bit more in their second and third lines. And now you feel a little bit more comfortable with the Oilers being able to get production from guys other than McDavid and Draisaitl, who are obviously going to chip in, and more than that, obviously. We saw what they did in last year's playoffs. They're going to have Draisaitl at full health this year, going into the playoffs, which is big because he had an ankle injury that he was playing through in last year's playoffs. And he was still fantastic, but you could clearly see it was hampering him at times. So I think having the big guns healthy, having a better roster around them, and the fact that the Pacific Division is probably the weakest division in hockey. It's not going to be a cakewalk for Edmonton certainly. But I'd rather have a path that could potentially be, if they win the Central or if they win the Pacific, which they would do with a win tonight and a Vegas regulation loss. I would certainly take a Seattle and then Vegas or LA path over, just about any other teams.
Gotcha. So you got Edmonton coming out of the West. Who do you got coming out of the East?
Yes, the East is really tricky, to be honest with you. I think I am going to go with the New York Rangers. The Rangers, obviously, of course, loading up the deadline to get Vladimir Tarasenko and Patrick Kane, two of the most dynamic stars of the 2010s, who both still have a lot left in the tank, obviously. We saw what this Rangers team was capable of doing in last year's playoffs. And what was really impressive there is a lot of their players, were making their first playoff trips. Guys like Phil Hedl, guys like Keandre Miller, guys like Igor Shesterkin, of course, unless you count that one bubble game he got into in 2020, which is in a whole different category. And I even mentioned Alexis Lafreniere and Capo Cockley as former top 2 picks. So I think they've shown a really good combination of youth. Adam Fox as well, obviously. I think he played I think he was in the bubble playoffs as well. But obviously one, two very different playoff atmospheres, certainly. So getting those guys, not only just a little experience, but a lot of it, and getting them on a deep playoff run very early in their careers. We always talk about young teams really having the learning experience here, quote unquote, and then they take that big step forward. Well, the Rangers kind of did both last season, so I think they're in a really good position to build off that. And again, I was talking about the path matters. And you look at that, the 2 top teams in the Metro, Carolina and New Jersey, are both fantastic teams. That being said, Carolina's dealt with some significant injuries. Of course, their play since Andrei Svechnikov was lost for the season has dropped off a bit. And the Devils, they have a lot of guys. They're kind of in a similar situation the Rangers were going into last season, which is they've got a great team full of young talent, but a lot of these guys haven't been in the playoffs before, haven't been there in a very long time at least. I believe Damon Severson and Miles Wood are the only 2 guys left over from New Jersey's last playoff trip in 2018. So I think the Rangers have the right mix or so of experience and youth, and obviously just general talent as well. Not to mention a show-stopping goaltender, Igor Shesterkin. And I think that they are going to come out of the Eastern part because, those 2 teams in Carolina and New Jersey have some extenuating circumstances that might make them a little bit more vulnerable in the playoffs than you would otherwise expect. And I think whichever team comes out of the Boston, Toronto, Tampa Bay triumvirate, assuming a wild card doesn't sneak in there and spoil the fun, is just going to be so beat up from 2 incredibly intense rounds of playoff hockey that I think the Rangers might have just a slightly easier road in those first 2 rounds, and that puts them in a better position to win the Eastern Conference Final this year after falling short on that stage a year ago.
Gotcha. So you heard it here first. Yeah, Andrew got the Edmonton Oilers and the New York Rangers battling out for the Stanley Cup. So I'll hold you to that. I'll probably be sure to take a look at a few games. But for sure, I love the insight.
The Mark Messier. I'll have to rename the Stanley Cup the Mark Messier Award if we get Oilers Rangers.
Gotcha, man.
At least temporarily.
I love the insight. Love being able to kind of get your point of view on the game. So, but let's switch gears to the other playoffs that are going to be going on. Are kind of technically going to be getting underway, I believe, on Friday or Saturday. I know with the NBA playoffs anyway. So pretty much here, I'm going to try to do share screen. Hopefully this doesn't turn into a it doesn't turn into a complete disaster trying to go through this all here. But okay, so we got a lot of teams here. So what I'm going to do is we're just going to go down the list for the most part of all the playoff matchups, and we'll just discuss them in either as much or as little as detail as we want to. But so
I'm gonna let you take the lead on a lot of these because you're the basketball guy. I'm the hockey guy.
No problem. So make sure you just be sure to chime in whenever you want. Probably talk to you a little bit about the Lakers and whatnot. But yeah, so we got Denver as the 1 seed in the Western Conference, and we'll just try to be as quick as possible in terms of just talking about certain things then, because we've still got a lot of MLB stuff and fantasy to talk about a little bit too. But yeah, I believe Denver is a lot of people might be counting Denver out, even though they're the 1 seed. They have Jokic and then the whole idea of just in terms of like getting his third straight MVP, and people are saying like it's Embiid. Like the whole MVP race has been a bit of a cluster in terms of like who deserves and who doesn't and all that. But yeah, I love the play-in matchups. I know we were talking about them a little bit earlier. Like I feel like the play-in tournament has just been so much fun, and just seeing. I wasn't able to stay up to watch OKC get past. I believe it was New Orleans they beat. So now it's
Yeah.
OKC between Minnesota now because Minnesota lost to the Lakers, and quite honestly, I won't talk about the Lakers as much in detail as until we get down to like the matchups because I believe they're going up against Memphis. But no, but yeah, just OKC versus Minnesota. I'll actually have OKC beating Minnesota. I feel like their team is just full of energy. And keep in
I thought you were
mind,
saying
yeah,
OKC beating Denver. I was going to be
no, 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 no.
challenged about that
OKC's
one.
OKC's a fun team, but they're still missing a lot. And like I love what they've been doing. A lot of people have been saying it's been a rebuild, but it's been a quick turnaround. Like they went from trading for not even aging stars, but just stars on bad contracts, that whole thing. And I love their philosophy, but it's just like when's it gonna get around time for them to start getting back into playoff contention and be looked at as more of a legitimate threat? Because I love Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. He's one of the better point guards in the league. The thing for him is that I love how he's able to get to the line as much as he does, and he's not. I'm not going to say he's not a capable shooter, but that's not a strong suit in terms of being a good player for that Oklahoma City team. So I'm happy that they're back in the playoffs. I feel like they're a young, up and coming team that could be a threat in the next couple of years. But obviously this year is more of
Yeah.
a transitional year anyway. But I do believe that they'll at least whether they lose to Minnesota, which I believe they can probably even sneak their way into a first round matchup with Denver. But I mean, Minnesota has more of the star power with Gobert, and then like getting him back, I feel like will be a plus for them. But I feel OKC would take that one.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the Timberwolves kind of a little dysfunctional now, to say the least. Obviously, with the Gobert situation, they really kind of collapsed in the fourth quarter against the Lakers. And I think you're right. I think Oklahoma City is coming into this game with a lot of momentum on their side, and some that useful, exuberance and bliss can be useful in a game like this where you're the underdog. So, yeah, I'll agree with you on that one. I think OKC takes it.
Yeah, so I would say OKC takes it, and then and obviously it seems like here with other fan picks, 89% of people who have done the bracket challenge is agreeing with Denver. I guess in games it really doesn't matter. I guess I would say in 4, but
I'm gonna say,
again, it's not the biggest deal. But this is a matchup I'm very
yeah,
interested in terms of.
that's probably the most intriguing match of the first round, I think.
Yeah, so you got Phoenix with Chris Paul, Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, like that whole just like tandem of star players, give or take, depending on who you talk to. But for the most part, it's a really good Phoenix Suns team, especially adding Kevin Durant. Like those guys made it to the finals without a Kevin Durant. So with LA, the Clippers, I believe they're going to be out of a Paul George for the foreseeable future. I'm not sure if he will be able to return at some point in the playoffs, maybe so. But I don't know. I feel like if anything, I feel I might go with the majority here and just go with Phoenix. But I think the Clippers could give Phoenix a little bit of a run for their money. We can kind of see how ready this Phoenix Suns team is with like their newfound superstar in a Kevin Durant. So I feel like this series would be very telling because you would believe that Phoenix probably should not make quick work, but should win this series against LA.
Yeah, if George is out, I think this is a series that Phoenix should win. If he comes back quickly, maybe they make it interesting. Certainly, I think the Clippers at full strength. Yeah, I think it would be a really great series to watch. But if Paul George is going to be out for a significant portion of the series, then yeah, I think it's Phoenix.
Yeah, again, I feel like it will be a true testament to how Kawhi Leonard is looked at because ever since like his days in Toronto, like that 1 year in Toronto, that magical run that he went on with that team, I feel that ever since then, ever since he became a Clipper, he's been more of a part-time player, whether it's because of injury or playing every other game, keep up with the rest, and then like that's a whole another can of worms that we can always dive into later. But I would say Phoenix. And it could go, I would say it can go probably like 5 or 6 games, depending. But again, I feel like it's just going to be a test for Phoenix. And I feel just to see how those guys are going to gel in terms of a playoff format. But yeah, I would have Phoenix taking it to meet Denver in the second round.
Yep.
All right. So next one's another interesting matchup is Golden State versus Sacramento. And that is very interesting because Golden State is the 6th seed, but keep in mind, these guys were such a really good home team in their home arena, and they're one of the worst teams on the road, which I feel like will be very telling. Seeing how that statistic plays a factor in terms of a playoff format. Since they're the sixth seed, they're not going to have home field advantage in most of these matchups if they were to make it far. And Sacramento's making it to the playoffs for the first time in nearly 17 years. So I feel like it's like just in terms of a NBA fan, seeing, like, I just love seeing teams be able to break droughts. Yeah. I'm always like an MLB. I'm waiting for the Guardians to win a World Series one of these years just to crack that streak. But
yeah, I mean, as a Phillies fan, it's the coolest feeling ever when you go through one of those long droughts and finally get to the other side of it. Absolutely. And that energy, as you saw with the Phillies, can propel you on a long route. And you're obviously talking about Golden State struggles away from home. They're obviously going to be the road team for this series. And this series kind of reminds me a lot of Suns Lakers back in 2021. You've got a veteran team in Golden State coming off a championship title that's the lower seed, and you've got a newer team that hasn't been good for a long time. They've got some young talent. They're in the playoffs for the first time in a long time. Everyone thinks, well, there's a good story, but even though they're the higher seed, I'm going to go with the veteran reigning champs as like the trendy upset pick. I mean, I don't know what happened. Phoenix took care of LA in that series and went on to, of course, go all the way to the NBA Finals. And I think, at least for one round, Sacramento's going to follow the same script. I think the Kings are going to take this
one. Wow. Going against the majority, because a lot of fans, 78% says Golden State, while 22% says, while a majority might be Kings fans, are saying the Kings are going to be Golden State. And judging, like, just looking at it from that terms of judgment and using that mindset, I can agree with you on that. I feel like the Kings could absolutely, I may not be on the same level as Phoenix in terms of beating the Lakers, but I would say it would be a competitive series. I feel like a lot of people are counting the third seeded Kings out. I feel they can at least get a playoff win, or a playoff series win, I should say. So I would say it's probably going to go down to the wire, because, again, Golden State still has Steph Curry. They still have a lot of like the same group of guys that won the championship with last year. But I will go with Sacramento, and it will go to 7 games, because even though I would feel if Golden State is following the same path that they've been following all year in terms of being a better home team and being absolutely just horrendous on the road, that's going to come back to bite them, and Sacramento will take it in 7 because it will be in their home arena. Another one that's getting a lot of talk, and this one seems like it's the most level, 53% for the Lakers, 47% for Memphis, with the Lakers beating Minnesota in the crypto arena. I don't know exactly. I know.
Yeah, crypto.com arena.
Crypto.com arena. Thank you. So going up against the second seed in Memphis with Ja Morant. Dylan Brooks is already saying that he wanted to match up with LeBron and the Lakers. And then, like, I'm not sure if you were able to take a look at the Lakers playing game against Minnesota, but just the fact that those guys were trailing for like a majority of the game, and it took Minnesota kind of having a bit of a meltdown for the Lakers to kind of like just take the lead and go on a little bit of a run there to be able to actually make it into the postseason. But give me your thoughts on like the Lakers playing. Give me your thoughts of like that matchup against Minnesota, and then how do you feel about Memphis and LA?
Yeah, I feel like the Lakers obviously, didn't play their best game through 3 quarters, certainly, but obviously you're going to take a ton of momentum from that 4th quarter and obviously benefit from the extra rest, especially with a veteran team, guys like LeBron and AD, certainly getting some extra days off for them. Certainly very important. And then as for Memphis, last year, obviously another team that had been a good team for a long time, getting back into the playoffs. Their performance in last year's playoffs, wasn't particularly convincing, really. I mean, they struggled at times against Minnesota in round 1. They were able to pull that out, and then they went down pretty convincingly in the second round. And I think kind of talking about Minnesota, like what we're talking about with Minnesota, just so much turmoil in this Grizzlies team, obviously with the whole Ja Morant situation and whatnot. So, I'll side with the majority here, and I'll go with the one upset on the western side of the bracket. I'll go with the Lakers in 6 here.
Okay. I can see either team going the distance, or not going the distance, but being able to beat the other in terms of this playoff series. So I would say in terms of playoff experience, in terms of championship caliber, Memphis I feel still isn't there yet, especially with a kind of turmoil like that. Like a championship team, unless you have like all-time great players on your roster that can face that level of adversity, I don't think that team is there yet. No matter how much somebody like guys on their team will want you to make you believe that. Like even like Dylan Brooks, he's been like a story the entire season, for his antics and what he says about like pretty much his beef with like Draymond Green, just kind of his actions on and off the court. And then the John Morant situation, like you were alluding to earlier. And they also don't have Steven Adams anymore for the postseason because I believe he caught a knee injury or something like that. So he's gonna be out.
Right. Yep, no Steven Adams. You're correct.
Yeah. So I would say Lakers. I'll agree with you and go with Lakers. I would say Memphis will give them a run for their money because I don't think, just judging for how the Lakers played in the play-in.
Yeah, I don't think Memphis is going to be a pushover in this.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think it's going to go 7, but I think that there's going to be like some takeover game, like a game like Ja could take over a game, and then LeBron could take over a game. It just depends. I feel on the supporting cast of both teams, but I think the Lakers with their championship experience and their superstar duo, if healthy, those guys could be able to take care of business and beat Memphis in I would say 6 games. So okay, so now that we got the second round, I'm trying to figure out how to do this. So I just do the entire Western Conference and then go through the East and just go there, or just do it round by round.
We can whatever you want.
You know what? Let's do round by round. Why not? Let's just okay. So here, I feel like we don't really need to be here for too long in terms of Milwaukee. You got Chicago beating
Bucks.
Yeah, yep. You got Chicago beating
Bucks.
Toronto, and now they're going to be facing Miami, I believe, tomorrow night or tonight. I'm not entirely sure. But I feel either way, the Bucks are going to make it past whoever they face. Depending on which team it could be, I feel it could be either a sweep or 5 games, depending on which team it is. I feel like if it was Chicago, I believe they swept them the last time they saw them in the first round. So, and I feel like Miami could take a game from them, especially like that little rivalry that they've had ever since the NBA bubble. But I'll just say Bucks in 4 because, Giannis, and just I don't even need to go into detail. But this is, I feel like this could be a very entertaining series right here. I always feel like the 4 and 5 are always, since they're so obviously like they're neck and neck, that's usually has the potential to be the most even matchup. But the Knicks, like every time the Knicks make the playoffs, even back in 2021, like the NBA world and just like Knicks fans come out the blue, and then they just will be riding this team to win a championship, even though they win only like one playoff game or so in the first round. So like that whole thing with the Hawks a few years ago with Trae Young being like the villain of New York City when they faced off. But I like this Cleveland team a whole lot with like the Donovan Mitchell trade, and then like just what they've been building over there now in like the years since LeBron went to LA. So give me your thoughts if you got a little bit of intake. But I would say I'm going the majority. I would say Cleveland takes it, but I think this has the potential to be an absolutely awesome series.
Yeah, my gut instinct is Cavs in 7 here. I think the Knicks are a more complete team than they were a couple of years ago. Obviously, Jalen Brunson's in the fold now, and he's been fantastic for them. They've got some great depth and some guys like Manuel Quickley, who very well may win 6th Man of the Year, certainly. And obviously, Randall and some other guys are still around from the 2021 team. But Cavs made some great moves over the offseason. They showed some really good championship level potential really earlier in the season, and then kind of regressed a little bit. But I think, under the bright lights of the playoffs against a good but not elite Knicks team in the first round, I think they're going to just squeak it out in 7 games.
Gotcha. I feel like there's going to be many just highlights that you're going to see on Instagram and all over Twitter, especially from this series. But okay, so we got Milwaukee versus Cleveland in the second round. I like it. Okay, so now going down, my goodness, Philadelphia, Philadelphia 76ers and Brooklyn Nets, which a very different looking Brooklyn Nets team from last year, getting swept by the Celtics in the first round last year when they had Kevin Durant and Kyrie. But I feel Philadelphia, like I feel like this could be just like probably isn't a lot to talk about here. I feel from this matchup from a few years back when D'Angelo Russell was still on the team, and you had like Jared Dudley and all that stuff going on, like just the amount of trash talk back and forth between these two teams. I feel it's going to be the same result. I feel like that was just awesome. Like just watching, like those are the kinds of playoff, like that playoff atmosphere people love in terms of like NBA basketball. But I would say I got Philadelphia in here. I would say maybe in like 4 or 5 games.
Yeah, I'll go Sixers in 5 here. I think the Nets are good enough and have enough defensively to steal a game. Harden and Embiid, obviously, that duo has been fantastic. They have been prone to off nights occasionally, and so I think they'll maybe have one during this series or so. But I think the Sixers are going to take this one, obviously. And for Philadelphia, I think really it's important for the Sixers to, show this series that they're built differently than they were in past years. Obviously, they've had some troubles closing out series before at times in the first round. Obviously, of course, in the second round, most notably against the Hawks a few years back. But last year they went up 3-0 on the Raptors. They looked great in the first 2 games in Philly, then really struggled in the 2 games in Toronto. they won game 3 in overtime incredibly. Then you lose game 4, lose game 5 at home, and then you win game 6. Great, but that extra game, it introduces so many more variables. And of course, Joel Embiid got hurt in that 6 game last year, and it set them behind the 8 ball, and they were just never able to dig out of that deficit against the Heat in the second round. So I think the Sixers are going to win this game, but I think this is an important series for the Sixers in terms of just how they look, and obviously setting up for what I'm just going to say now is going to predict now is going to be a showdown with the Celtics in the second round.
Yeah. So I'm not gonna overlook. I love Atlanta. I think they're a great team and they're building something good. But seeing that how they're gonna do how they were in the play-in, like those guys, like they absolutely just torched Miami on the glass. So like Clint Capella himself had 21 rebounds and I believe 8 offensive rebounds going up against Bam Adebayo over there. So I would say that that they could have the potential to steal a game or make it a little bit interesting. But I'm just gonna say Celtics in 4 because like those guys made to the finals. They're hungry. They want a championship, and like just like that tandem of Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and then like just the ability and the depth that they have. They brought in Malcolm Brogdon that made them like that solidified like that second unit or just like the leader of that second unit. I feel he's the sixth man of the year going up. Like I know there's discussions him or Emmanuel Quigley, but I just don't agree that Emmanuel Quigley has the same in terms of like stats might look good, but then like you look at in terms of bench points and that kind of thing and stats coming off the bench, I feel Malcolm Brogdon is the sixth man of the year. But yeah, I feel like this Boston Celtics team is on a mission. So yeah, I feel like it's like the first step in terms of trying to make it back to the finals goes through Atlanta, and I feel it's gonna be a quick series. To your point about Philadelphia, though, I feel like that's been their in terms of like the injury bug or just really bad luck, I should say, in terms of like the last few postseasons, because I've always said that they've been a really good regular season team. Joel Embiid, when healthy, is an absolute monster, is a great player, but I feel they always run into some sort of bad luck in terms of injuries or in terms of, I wouldn't even say playoff matchup, but like maybe a couple of lapses in terms of certain possessions, and then it just alters an entire series. Or just when it comes to like roster moves, because when like you remember when they made it to the bubble, Joel Embiid didn't have Ben Simmons because Ben Simmons was at home,
Exactly.
and they ended up.
I mean, you look at the last 4 second round appearances. Last year Embiid misses the first 2 games, and then Danny Green tears his ACL and LCL minutes into Game 6. The year before, obviously, was the Sixers falling apart against the Hawks, and the Ben Simmons drama crescendoing and reaching a boiling point. The year before, then the Sixers didn't have Simmons, of course, in the bubble, and they get swept by Boston. And the year before that, of course, they lose on one of the most improbable shots in NBA history in the Kawhi buzzer beater. So.
Yep. So I feel like this is going to be an intriguing matchup once again, Sixers and Celtics. But okay, let's head back over to the Western Conference. So now we got Denver versus Phoenix in the second round from our predictions. But I feel like this is like a really good matchup. I feel like. But I'm gonna go with Phoenix making it to the Western Conference Finals. I feel like they have more offensive weapons compared to Denver, even though Denver is still a really solid all around team. Obviously, the Joker is gonna make he does a great job of making his teammates better. And you got I believe not Gary Harris. My goodness, it's crap. What's his name? Point guard on the Nuggets. Something. Is it Harris or is it Murray?
Did you think of Jamal Murray?
Jamal Murray. I don't know why. I was thinking of Gary Harris when he played on the Nuggets. Jamal Murray, yes. So he was an absolute dog in the playoffs, I believe, like back in the bubble, obviously. I know he's been trying to work his way back from the ACL injury he suffered, I believe, like last year or a couple of years ago. So, but yeah, I feel like Denver is gonna put up a big fight, but I feel I got Phoenix going to the Western Conference Finals because I feel like they'll figure it out. They'll figure out what they needed to do to get out of the first round, and they're gonna like show like they're gonna start gelling a little bit more as a team. And obviously like got Kevin Durant, so I feel like that's like the biggest difference maker.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know. I have a weird feel like I definitely think Phoenix is the better team on paper, and obviously they made a massive addition in Kevin Durant. I don't know. I have a feeling that Denver might win this. I don't really have a good explanation for why, but I'll say Denver. I'll say that Jokic, just has one of those most incredible playoff series that, sometimes you see from guys, just completely taking over. Of course, obviously it seems like the MVP is tilting in Joel Embiid's favor, so maybe that motivates him a little bit. And I think it's going to be a very tight series, certainly, but I'll go against the grain a little bit here. I think most people pick Phoenix in this matchup, but I'll go with Denver.
Okay. But yeah, I can hear what you're saying. Like Denver, like that core has kind of been solidified for the last couple of years, while Phoenix is still like obviously they added Kevin Durant, so that can be a blessing and a curse trying to figure it out. So maybe they don't figure it out in the first round, but they still get the job done. But then like they go up against a more experienced and more put not even better put together team, but a team that gels a lot more. So you know what,
Mhm.
I'll pick Denver, but I'll pick in 7 games because I feel
Yeah,
like just
it's
how
gonna be
good
in
the
season
team is.
six.
Okay, so there's a battle in California. Kings
Mhm.
and Lakers. So okay, it's interesting here because I feel like if I say that Sacramento can beat Golden State, then I feel they can beat the Lakers, especially like I
Mhm.
my thing in terms of like when quote unquote like good teams or teams that should be good are on the lower seeds. There's a reason that they're they placed where they did in the regular season. Whether it's injuries, whether it's just like not postseason play performances throughout the regular season. So I can say with confidence that Sacramento can take it and they can make their way and go on a magical run to the Western Conference Finals. But also, it's kind of hard to bet against LeBron James in terms of if he gets out of the first round. I feel like he's motivated. Like I want to make it back. He wants to get back to another Finals in a Laker uniform, and this time with fans in attendance and that whole thing going on. I feel like both the Western Conference series have the potential to go 7 games. But that's so interesting. You know what? I might go Kings in 6, but I
I'm
want to
going.
hear your.
I like it. I like it. I like Kings.
You like it short and sweet. All right, we're going Kings in 6. I feel like LeBron is gonna play out of his mind, but I feel like it's just not gonna be
Mhm.
enough. Something might happen, but but okay. So over to the Eastern Conference now. Let me hold on. Try to scroll to make sure you can get both. All right, you know what? That's good enough. All right, so Milwaukee and Cleveland. I feel the Bucks. Cleveland is going to make it a series, but I feel like the Bucks take it.
Yeah, I think the Bucks just have too much.
I see like it's just easy. You know what? They got Giannis. They got Drew Holiday. But I would say in terms of like I feel like a team that is suited to be able to guard somebody like Giannis. Like the Cavs, they have oh my goodness, they have Jared Allen. But who's the power forward that they got over there? The kid that they drafted maybe like 2 years ago. My goodness, I'm terrible with
The
names right now.
Cavs.
Yeah,
Is
the
it
Cavs.
Mobley?
Yeah, Mobley, exactly. Like they have big guys that can be able to try to slow down Giannis a bit. And I feel that's gonna make it a more intriguing series. But yeah, we say Milwaukee. Let's say we can say like 6 games.
Yeah, I think 5 or 6.
6 games. Okay. Now the matchup we're looking most forward to: Sixers, Celtics.
Oh gosh. I mean, it's head versus heart, right? Really? I mean, the Celtics
Yeah.
obviously have been the better team against the Sixers all 4 meetings this year of the regular season. The one the Sixers won, Joel Embiid had 52 points, and the Celtics didn't have Jalen Brown or Robert Williams III. That being said, I do feel like the Sixers team is pretty good. I think this is probably the best Sixers team of the Embiid era, other than maybe the 18-19 team with obviously the deadline additions they made or before the deadline to get Harris and Butler. But that team didn't have a full season to get used to each other, and in trading for those guys, they sacrificed a lot of their depth. Their bench play in that series against Toronto was one of the biggest reasons why they lost. I think the Sixers are a little bit better to handle that this year, obviously with Harden. I believe I read that Harden lineups without Embiid for the Sixers this year are plus 1.1 net rating. I could be off on that, but if I'm remembering correctly, that certainly speaks much better to the Sixers' ability to handle those non-Embiid minutes, which is really going to be the key for them. Embiid, the Celtics have some great defenders. Of course, they're going to make life difficult on Embiid, but he's still going to get his at least to a certain extent. I'm going to go with the Sixers. I'm taking them.
You
I'm
going with this? No,
I'm going to take them.
I can respect that
Obviously,
absolutely.
there's bias here, but I'm going to take them.
Hey, no harm done. I'm going to say this because just looking at the track record of how the Sixers have been in terms of when it comes and then postseason play, like I said before, they've been a great regular season team and beats a monster. Getting Harden, I feel like was one of the better trades they could have done at that time. I feel
Yeah,
that
that was all they could have done with Simmons, really.
I'm going to look at it. Let's say the Sixers beat the Celtics in the second round. I feel it's them taking advantage of what the Celtics have been having problems with doing throughout stretches in terms of decision making, and I still am nervous about how was with them taking care of the ball as going all the way back to the finals of last year. Because I feel like the turnover issues have been like the biggest red flag for this team in terms just taking care of the ball and being able to kind of weather the storm a little bit. With that being said,
Yeah,
I
the Sixers
feel
have and the Sixers have one of the guard players with the most steals in the NBA, and Anthony Melton. So that's someone who can
yeah, so
potentially be
like
an X factor.
that would be something to definitely look at in terms of fast break points or points off of turnovers and that whole thing. I feel like it's going to be very telling of how that series is, and it's very telling in this series how much the Celtics really like are wanted. Because I said in the first round, I feel like these guys are on a mission, but it's also in terms of actually bringing everything that they've been trying to do through the majority of the season because they've been one of the better teams in the NBA. They were locking down that first seed for the better part of the year. Obviously, they ran into some speed bumps, but I feel that this Celtic team going up against just seeing how Jaylen Brown has progressed, seeing how Jason Tatum has progressed, the addition of Malcolm Brogdon, Derek White butting himself into that into like that upper level that the Celtics traded him for because he's been having great performances, especially even I believe it was a game against the Sixers where the either against the Sixers or the Bucks where he had like nearly 30 and like this was like without Tatum, without Brown, and it was like he was pretty much like he was like the guy running the show, that whole thing. So I feel in terms of like if history were to repeat itself, I have to go with the Celtics, but I feel either way it's gonna be a 6 or 7 game series. I'll even say 7 because I feel like that's like the only way it could get decided, that kind of thing. But I would have to go Celtics in 7.
And it's a very fair pick, certainly, and I think a lot of people would agree with you if not pick the Celtics to win in 6 or maybe even 5 potentially. But I don't
Yeah, I
know.
feel like
I think the Sixers have built a better
you
team,
make
a more
great points.
complete team, a more well-rounded team. The addition some of the guys that they've added, like the behind the scenes guys more so, like Anthony Melton, who started at times this year but come off the bench a lot of time as well. Even someone like Jalen McDaniels. The big concern with the Sixers last year was they had a lot of guys who were considered one-way players, like Matisse Thybulle, for example. That was the big thing with Thybulle. It's like, yeah, he's great defensively, and you can hide his offensive weakness in the regular season, but you can't really do that in the playoffs. So I think the Sixers have done a better job of getting some guys who can hang on to both ends of the floor. And guys like McDaniels, who's been solid, and who was I literally just talking about? Melton, obviously. And I think PJ Tucker, someone obviously we can handle the defensive end. If he can do what he did against the Celtics last week when he hit those big corner threes in the fourth quarter, if he can, just stabilize the offense a little bit and just make teams think about him, I think that's the type of thing that could, really pay off for the Sixers big time. Because now that you can't help off someone like him, you've got to allocate less resources stopping Embiid and Harden. And if you're not giving your full attention to that two-man game, they can light up even the best of teams.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like both teams have the potential to be at their absolute best, or there's times where they can be one of the worst offensive teams in the league, and this is going for both teams because they're not hitting their
Yeah, the
shots.
Sixers, yeah.
They just have an off night.
Been something that's played the Sixers.
Yeah. Okay. So like just judging it, just asking you if the Sixers did get past Boston, do you have them beating Milwaukee?
I do not probably. I think it would be a really close series. I think there's definitely a path for the Sixers, but I think you kind of worry about a little bit. Like I said, the Sixers group has had trouble with Lucas at times. I think you worry about a little bit of a hangover maybe from finally getting past the second round for the first time in 22 years. You're so excited about that, and maybe get off to a bit of a slow start against Milwaukee. And obviously, if you're not completely locked in from start to finish every second against the Bucks, it's probably not going to go well for you. So.
Yeah.
I'll hedge a little bit here. I'll say the Sixers get over that big hurdle, but I think they fall short of their ultimate goal.
Okay, so we got Andrew going with the Sixers. I'm going with my Celtics. I'm just gonna go. I wanted just to have you touch upon the potential Sixers Milwaukee matchup. So, but yeah, I feel like that's a great point. I feel either way it would be an amazing series against Milwaukee because you have that matchup with how is Harden going to deal with Drew's defense? How is Drew going to be able to contain Harden if Harden's on fire? How is Giannis going to be the one guarding Embiid, or they got Brook Lopez who has the potential to win a Defensive Player of the Year, going to be taking care of that matchup. But no, but yeah, absolutely. Either way, I feel that absolutely has the potential to be like maybe the best series out of the entire postseason right here. But we would just have to wait and see. But okay, so now we're at the conference finals. So we got Denver versus Sacramento. I would say
I love the Kings. I think they're riding here.
Yeah, I would say if Denver because Denver would be on a run because they beat the play-in team, and then I feel like they'd be riding high on beating a team like Phoenix. So I would say Denver makes it to the finals for the first time in a long. Have they ever made the finals?
Let's look it up.
Yep. See, good. Because I don't remember the last
the NBA guy here.
I mean, yeah, that's true. But to be honest, I'm like with baseball season coming around, I've kind of like just been on the back burner for like the majority of the NBA season.
They have never made the NBA finals. Made the AA finals.
ABA finals.
They have not made the NBA final.
Okay. But I feel like
finals appearances, but never NBA final.
Interesting. I mean, I feel like this matchup with Sacramento and Denver, I feel like it's a lot of just like, I would say NBA fans' dream just to watch like two teams that are like just on the outside looking in. Like you would never think that those guys would compete against each other for a chance to compete in the finals. But I like when teams like it's like a team's first time making it to the finals, or just seeing new teams and new faces making it that far. But yeah, I would say with Denver because they would have the best player in the series with Jokic, and I don't believe Sabonis would be able to contain what Jokic could do. So I would say in 5 or 6, but I would say Sacramento. Either way, it would have been a magical run, at least judging from our point of view. So, okay. So we talked about Sixers versus Milwaukee if the Sixers made it to the conference finals, but let's just say the Celtics meet up again with the Bucks this time in the conference finals because Milwaukee lost to Boston in 7 last year in the second round. Obviously, they didn't have Chris Middleton, but so both teams would have. You can say both teams technically got better, or Milwaukee got better a little bit because they got their guy back. So, okay, who would you have in a series with Boston and Milwaukee round? I don't even like round 4 or 5 at this point.
Yeah, I'm gonna go Boston for this edition just because I think the Celtics have so much versatility and depth in their team, like you were talking about in the Sixers series preview. That I think they'd just be able to find a way to just exploit the tiniest of weaknesses on the Bucks side of things, and I'll go with the Celtics in this one.
Okay. Yeah, I would say the Celtics take it again. I feel like both teams have saw each other enough throughout like Giannis's career and Tatum and Brown's career that these guys know the ins and outs of each other in terms of opponents and as not teammates, but as opposing teams. I feel Boston, it went to 7 last year, but I feel if they make it back to the conference finals, that means Tatum and Brown are just like the whole team as a whole is clicking on all cylinders. But I feel like Tatum and Brown had to get that extra gear that everybody's been saying that they lacked, and that's why they didn't win the championship last year. That I feel that these guys absolutely could make it all the way back to the finals, and I would say they would beat Milwaukee in 6 because I feel like they would be too much for that team. Plus, just the other guys, like you got Al Horford, you got, like I said, Derek White, Malcolm Brogdon, those guys coming off the bench when Tatum and Brown aren't on the floor, which is
of course,
which would be very interesting. But yeah, I got the Celtics making it all the way. That's kind of like that's my hope and that's my thought process as the basketball guy and as a Celtics fan. But okay, so we made it. The whole journey the NBA journey has accumulated or has cultivated, I should say, at the NBA Finals. First time for Denver and Celtics looking to raise banner 18. So I feel if this were the NBA Finals matchup, I feel like it just has great potential just for the sake of basketball. Because I feel like just watching if these two teams were to match up, it would be so much fun.
Yep, I agree with you.
I would say here with I would have Boston beating Denver. I would say
I agree. I would have Boston too.
I would say, but also I would say that it would go the distance. I feel like both teams in terms of let's look at like the path for like Denver in our little so it would be 4 against the playing team, 7 against Phoenix. Like this, just trying to scroll through this page has been so annoying. But
yeah.
And then Denver beating Sacramento in 5. I feel, and then we look at the Celtics 4, 7, and 6. So these guys might be going through a bit of a lot more of a like the ringer a little bit. Especially I feel they would be going up against better teams. I feel like the East in terms of like the playoff brackets have a lot better better built teams in terms than the West. I feel like either way, whoever comes out of the East, I feel like that's where the NBA champion is going to be coming from. But I would say the Celtics, but I would say it goes like 6 or 7.
Yeah, I think that's a good call.
I would say here though, I said Brown would be the Finals MVP last year when they were going up against Golden State. I still feel that when a lot of people say like Jason Tatum is like the number one on that team, I do believe that Jaylen Brown is gonna like would go off in a he even went off in the NBA Finals uh last year. But I feel like
Mhm.
most definitely with in terms of the Celtics, I feel like they'll take it. But yeah, say like 6 or 7. So finally, we finished. We're done.
We did it.
Crazy. Absolutely. This
Mhm.
I feel like I had a good time doing this. Obviously, like I didn't realize we was taking it through like the majority of the time we got,
Yeah.
but yeah, for sure. Celtics 6 beating Denver, absolutely fun playoff series. But now nitty gritty, we're going into MLB and we're going a little bit of the of fantasy. So I want to talk to you because I lost my first week matchup against Milo. I believe did you win yours?
I snuck out a very close come from behind win.
Gotcha. So I wanted to
Won by
ask
7 points.
like it's me just trying to figure out like I'm still trying to get used because this is my first time doing MLB fantasy, but I know reading back on Milo's article and like just seeing like some of the points he gave about in terms of teams and stuff. Like my team, like my pitching's been like I texted you a couple of days ago. It's been like a revolving door of talent.
Mhm.
So like I'm trying to just
Yeah,
put
yeah.
together some guys, but just in terms of like how do you like your team going after week one? Like what like do you feel like there's any changes that need to become? Because I know there's a lot of guys on the IL for you.
Yeah, I've got 4 guys who are hurt right now, and Rodon, Musgrove, Altuve, and Eloy now. So I'm hurting a little bit, certainly. So my outfield and second base depth is not great as a result. But I think other than that, I'm pretty happy with how my team looks for the most part. Outfield might be a little bit weak, but I like my depth at pitching, certainly. I think that's really important. And obviously, when I get Rodon and May back, I'm going to have to make some roster decisions. But I think those guys are obviously going to make my team even better, and maybe I can parlay one of my starters then into some outfield or second base help. I probably outfield help because I mean Altuve will be back at some point, certainly probably like late May or so. So yeah, I'm feeling good about the team right now, even though acknowledging that it'll be hard for us the first month or two of the season with all those injuries or stuff. So getting that first win certainly was helpful.
I feel like it's super easy to kind of overreact in terms of like fantasy. Like obviously, like this is going through like the better part of I believe all the way up through like I believe through the summer, like at the earliest. So I feel like it's really easy to overreact after your first week, especially somebody like for me. I lost to Milo, believe by like around 30 or 40, something like that. But hey, I
Mhm.
even reached out to you if you need some outfield help. I'll be more than
Yeah,
willing
yeah,
to work with you if it means getting an arm. But yeah, for me, it's just like it's kind of like how the Red Sox like I'm comparing my team to how the Red Sox were back in 2021. Like like they have like maybe one of the better offenses in the league because I got Alvarez, Soto, Lindor, Arenado, like all-star team worth of bats, right? And then my pitching is that's where like the weakness is at. So like if the offense isn't clicking, then like it's going to be hard to look at my pitching staff to try to pick up the rest of the team. And I feel like starters, at least in terms of how the points are accumulated, starters or like consistent starters is where you can get a really good majority of the points at. So that's something I needed. I probably
yeah.
should have did a better job in terms of researching, but I feel like I'll figure it out as the season goes on.
Mhm.
I would want to ask you like because I know I talked with James before the season kind of kicked off. Where do you see yourself? We've seen the Milo rankings. Like, do you believe you have the best team on paper out of the everybody in the league?
I think when I'm fully healthy, probably. I mean, like I said, I might need one more outfielder because I did not realize how thin the outfield depth was. A couple of years ago, outfield used to be one of the deepest positions in fantasy, and now it thinned out pretty quick in this year's draft. But I think, like I said, I have the pitching that I can maybe go out and get that extra outfielder if needed. And I think that, yeah, I look at my team and I'm really happy with it. I mean, you've got Real Muto, maybe the best catcher in baseball. Goldschmidt, you could argue, is best first baseman. Altuve, maybe best second baseman. Bichette's one of the best shortstops. A guy in Gunnar Henderson, who he figures to be a future star who could, obviously contribute this year. Otani obviously is fantastic on both sides of the ball. Javier, Kirby's like dark horse for Cy Young, or John Musgrove, both very solid, of course. So yeah, I really like how my team panned out.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I would say just shying away from a little bit of fantasy. Like obviously, like it's only been a week, so there's still like plenty of things that can happen. Guys can get hurt or guys can get on a hot streak. Otani's probably gonna ride that wave of that contract here the entire season. So they're probably gonna get like just probably gonna be able to win a few weeks just with him alone. But I would want to ask you because I got the notification a few hours ago that the Rays are now 13-0. They beat my Red Sox 9-3. I want to ask you, like,
Crazy.
should we be looking as MLB fans at the Rays as like just a run of dominance, or it's just like how scheduling lined up? It's just been a string of good luck for them.
Yeah, I think probably somewhere in between, obviously, and that's usually where the truth is. Are the Rays going to run away with the best record in baseball this year? I don't think so, but I mean, you're off to a 13 start, and you built one heck of a cushion, obviously. And looking at some of the teams they've played so far, yeah, obviously, their schedule has not been the most difficult. Starting with Tigers, Nationals, A's, and Red Sox. Obviously, that's 4 teams who didn't make the postseason. And things obviously, honestly, don't look that hard for them necessarily going forward. They've got Toronto for 3, which is a little bit tricky, but then they've got the Reds and the White Sox, who aren't the greatest teams either. And then, yeah, I mean, the balanced schedules this year obviously change everything, certainly. And I think it's something that works in Tampa Bay's favor because obviously the AL East was fantastic last year. 4 teams over 500. Nearly all 4 made the postseason. Baltimore was very close to getting that last wild card spot from Seattle. So, yeah, I think the balanced schedule thing has helped the Rays a lot early on in the season, certainly. I'm going to keep helping them going forward. I think some other teams are going to catch up and maybe pass them at some point, but no doubt this Rays team is putting everyone on notice that they were kind of a pushover last year in the postseason. I don't know if the team is this season.
Yeah, I feel like that's like just the beautiful thing about baseball because the team could be absolutely dominant throughout the entire course of the season, and then they like their whole season can get destroyed in a matter of even one swing of the bat. A lot of the Guardian series from last year. So like I'm happy for the Rays. I feel like those guys have always been kind of overlooked just because of how they are in terms of building the roster and like keeping it under a certain bottom line, if I'm making sense in terms of not wanting to spend a lot of money and just focusing on homegrown talent. But I would say my biggest thing in terms of the Rays, because I don't dislike them as an organization or like in terms of any of the players on their squad. But my thing is it's just they need to get out of Tropicana Field. Like they need a brand new
Yeah,
stadium.
absolutely.
Like not even just
Yeah,
because
I think they only had 21,000 today for a team that's 13-0 now.
That's feel like just imagine, and I believe they're not even in Tampa Bay. Like they're in, I believe, right, St. Petersburg, Florida. So like the location of the actual stadium is like off of like the actual like where Florida is actually located, and there's like only like one way in and out of like where the stadium's at, or like just something really crazy geographically anyway. So I would say for them in like Oakland, they need new stadiums. I feel like that would like bring like some sort of fan interest, at least a lot more fan interest back in terms of like Tampa Bay anyway, because those guys are actually trying to play winning baseball. And so I would say for them, like that's like really their only issue because like they have a superstar in the making in Wander Franco, and then like Brandon Lau's back, and I feel like he have the potential to have another great season like he did in 2021. So I feel like it's not a fluke, but also like I feel like they'll probably not run out of gas, but they'll come down to earth a little bit as they get into the nitty gritty of the season. But just asking you, has there been any other surprising teams or any players that have been surprising to you that have been going on a hot start?
Honestly, like, I'm sure there are some, but I just haven't had a chance to look at it really. Honestly,
Gotcha.
These last couple weeks have been busy for me. So
you know what?
I started this doing this a couple of years ago. I try not to look at the MLB standings until as late in the season as possible, because like it's 162 games. It's almost every single day. It's just if I had done that the last 2 years, it would have just created so much more stress for me.
That's true. Very true.
I try not to look at the individual standings, but obviously individual players, and so they'll pay more attention to obviously with fantasy. But I just haven't had a ton of time to
as long as
baseball so far.
Yeah, as long as the team makes the playoffs, that's the only thing you're worried about at the moment. I gotcha.
Exactly. Yes.
So in turn, I wanted to bring up Brian Reynolds because he's been absolutely tearing it up. But I wanted to touch upon the Pirates and a teammate of Brian Reynolds because of O'Neal Cruz, who fractured his ankle, I believe, or broke his ankle because of that slide. I'm not sure if you saw the clip or saw what happened.
Yeah, I didn't see it, but I know of it.
Yeah. So I wanted to get your take on that whole situation because from my understanding is that he went for he was indecisive and tried to go for a slide And like the crazy thing is that the Pirates have actually been playing winning baseball the first couple of games throughout the season. But I would say like how much potential do you see in O'Neal Cruz, and how much of a setback does this have on the Pirates?
I think obviously he has a lot of potential, and obviously it's really unfortunate that happened. He's got tremendous. We saw last year tremendous talent. Obviously, I think the hardest hit ball in the Statcast era. He's just raw right now, and obviously the thing to get that maturity and get him to the level where he can potentially be one day is one of the best players of baseball. He's just playing time. So yeah, it's definitely a big setback for him, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, I hear you definitely on that. And the crazy thing is that Zavala, the catcher he ran into, he started talking some trash to O'Neal because of like the kind of like the semi collision, like weird slide he did, which ended up causing the injury. So I feel like that's just been a bunch. But okay, so I'll say we'll start wrapping it up a little bit there. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on before we call it?
I think I'm good.
Okay, all good. Andrew, thank you so much for doing this. I hope you guys enjoyed the April 13th edition of the Vendetta Sports Daily Show. That's been Andrew. I've been Jeremiah Dependent. We'll see you guys next time.